Greetings, everyone. This is Sharu with the Astro Weather update for tomorrow, or today, depending on when you're watching this, Thursday, May 8th. We're going to have the moon in the Vedic constellation Punarvasu, which means to make good again or to make light again. And it's ruled over by Aditi, the mother goddess. And so it's this idea of giving support to things. I find a lot of people that have this in their birth chart really like to give support and create environments for people to thrive, ultimately, and things to thrive. And so this is an incredible day for doing that. And I like to think of it as yesterday was the constellation Ardra, the howler, like that emotional storm. And Punarvasu is the light after the storm, right? It's symbolic of the growth after the storm, right? The light comes and then things prosper and things grow. And so this is one of those constellations that is associated with wealth and abundance, right? It's just this constant regeneration of wealth. And so it's one of those money nakshatras, money constellations. So what's interesting is that we're going to have this conjunction going on, conjunction and opposition. That's really showing this Mars and Saturn opposition with the nodes of the moon. And so already that Mars and Saturn is like that rush hour traffic energy, right? That frustration that starts and stops. And so wherever the moon goes, it really highlights that kind of energy. Or it highlights whatever is in the sky that day. And so what's happening is, so the moon crossed over Mars, and now on Thursday, the 9th, it's going to be approaching from the morning all the way till about noon PST, this north node here, right? And so what that does is that it causes more mental restlessness and like having our mind racing, like always like more impulsive and like keep thinking, we keep going. And especially in this constellation Punarvasu, which wants to make things vibrant again and make things grow. It's like, oh, maybe experiencing this like kind of anger with passing the Mars, and then this like frustration ultimately of maybe feeling blocked out there. And so we're ready to just really take it on and go for it with our day. And so, yeah, it might just be a little bit too distorted, and this energy builds and pops around 12 noon PST. So, it's always helpful to bring structure to things when it's all windy and out of control. And so there's, just mindful breathing is a really simple practice you can do, or just like looking up from your work and going for a walk, and just taking really periodic breaks in that way. And then also just not multitasking, ultimately, just focusing on one task at a time. And so what's happening at the same time, because we're going to have the moon with the north node around 12 noon, and then Saturn is right in that same position there. So that creates and really exemplifies and points out this opposition that's going on with the Mars and the Saturn. But more importantly, it's going to create this idea of like, oh, there's work. Whatever, Saturn's this work, responsibility, and commitment, right? And so it's with that mental restlessness, and then feeling like out there's this thing that's making us want to work and do this thing in the perfect way, right? And so it's good to just really structure our time. And also when I see this Mars opposite Saturn in natal charts, it's a lot of times boundary issues, right? Learning how to say no, no in relationships. Ultimately, it's like out there's this big responsibility, and so you're willing to really just take that on. And so it's just about learning to have your own sovereign connection, and just know to have that boundary so that you don't overextend yourself, right? And become empowered and just say like, no, no, no. Right. And so, uh, yeah. So basically, it's this maybe like working a lot all day, and it really pops around 12 noon, 1 o'clock, and then around 8 p.m. the moon finally leaves Gemini, and it leaves this conjunction here, and around 8 p.m. the moon, 8 p.m. PST, the moon enters Cancer, right? And so it's like, let's just chill out, right? Self massage or have somebody massage you, right? After that long, stressful day, and just chill. Oh, that's so nice. Cool. So, we're going to have another guest on today to see about her chart. And what's interesting is that yesterday I had somebody with this Saturn and Mars conjunct in their chart in relationships. And guess what? So does my guest. Really fascinating. And so let me go ahead and call her up and get her on here. And we'll take a look at her chart and see what's going on with that for her. But pretty synchronistic that without me trying or anything, these people have both had these Mars Saturn things in their chart. All right.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Hear you great.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you so much for being on today.
Yeah,
And
I'm
yeah,
excited.
uh-huh. And so for all those astrologers out there, I'm going to put up your chart here.
Okay.
And it's all in like the super boring Vedic looking way, which is why I made this really sexy looking chart here.
Perfect.
Yeah. But right, so what inspired you to want to get on and have your chart read today?
Well, I've actually been learning a little bit about Western astrology, and I've been pretty interested in finding out more about Vedic and seeing kind of what the differences were as far as, well, a couple areas in my chart, like my seventh house.
Yeah. Right.
That's one thing. And
Which is
also,
relationship.
yeah, yeah, and also maybe just kind of my purpose in life, just a small thing like that.
Yeah, cool. Hey, Harsh Modi. Nice to see ya. Uh, cool. And hi, Veronica. Yay. Um, so let's look at that.
Okay.
And so now what you have, let's pull up just the chart here. But first we have the Saturn and Mars there, and that's going to be the same in Western and Vedic. And so what we have here, it's in this Vedic constellation Anuradha. And so what's really cool about Vedic astrology is that we don't just have the 12 sun signs, but we also have 27 moon signs, like Vedic moon signs. So there's so much
Okay.
more detail to be had. And that's where it's just like endlessly. I mean, imagine like getting to know 27 additional constellations, right?
That's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
But each one is like, I find like more rich than even one sun sign, because it has thousands of years of unbroken lineage of these like sages and mystics tripping out on the sky, right? And all the,
Right.
yeah. And so each one has a god or goddess that rules over it and a particular Shakti or energy. And so Anuradha is this Shakti of devotion, right? It's literally, or worship. It's that Scorpio place that really wants to merge with the divine in relationships, right? And so that's in the place of relationship for you. So it's like really wanting that merge to happen. And you'll notice too that this Mars and Saturn are at the same exact degree. And so that's doing a number of things that we'll get into. But I just wanted to foreshadow of like, oh, what's that all about, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the main difference that people notice first between Western and Vedic is that their sun signs different and everything's different. Like your sun isn't on the cusp of Pisces, and Aquarius, it's fully in Aquarius, right?
Hmm.
And that's because we're using closer to astronomy rather than the seasons to orient the sky, which is what Western does.
Okay.
Cool. And so your moon goes back to Taurus, and your rising goes back to Taurus as well. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's one thing I was really curious how that was going to work out because I feel like I identify quite a lot with Gemini.
Uh huh. Right.
So I'm curious to see how this
Well,
works.
yeah. Well, what's interesting is that this constellation, Mrigashira, and all the constellations are listed down here, really small, so you can't see it. But Mrigashira bridges between Gemini and Taurus. It's like halfway in
Oh,
Taurus and halfway in Gemini. And so
okay.
but it's still in this Taurus dynamic, but towards the end. And so Mrigashira is known as the searching star, right? It's that looking for fulfillment and that insatiable thirst, right? And
Okay.
and then also it's about that Gemini quality of like taking a bunch of things and like weaving them together, right? That's what Mrigashira is about. So pretty cool. And
That is awesome.
yeah, yeah. And so, but also what happens with people that have the moon in the first house is that they're very changeable. They can like jump around a bunch, and that's like a Gemini quality as well. And then look at your
Mm.
career chart here. I mean, you have 4 planets, right? In your actions in the world. So that's also going to be like, whoa, all these different things.
Right.
Yeah. And so this is an air sign, Aquarius. And the Vedic constellation that you have is Shatabisha. And Mercury is also in Shatabisha. And so it's the middle of an air sign. And Shatabisha means 100 medicines or 100 healers, right? And so it's like, I do 100 different things, right? There's like 100 different ways. So we find a lot of times in the middle of air signs that there's that multitude or splitting kind of quality, right? And so
Okay.
it's interesting is like we have the sun signs in every aspect of our life, right? Your Gemini is in the second house of like money and finances, right?
Hmm.
And so we all have all the signs within us. So we can read any sign our whole life and identify with it somehow, some way, right? But I would say you have like a lot of Aquarius, obviously the 11th sign. And
That
but
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and Aquarius is very like progressive and thinking outside of the box and all these different things. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. But I think the biggest another part of it is the moon being in the first house, and it's like
Okay.
traveling around and especially with Mrigashira, the searching star, right? Cool. So now that's really powerful. You have moon. It's said to be exalted in the in Taurus
Okay.
because it's like this groundedness, this being satiated and secure in that. Now the thing is you have this Mars and Saturn directly opposite that, right? And so it's doing a number of things. And first we look at what just taking them one at a time. So Mars opposite the moon is like, oh, like partners can be more assertive, right? And dominating, you know? And it also puts a lot of like passion into you as well, and just being really passionate and working really well and wanting to do things in partnerships.
Okay.
And then you have Saturn as well, which is moon opposite Saturn, which we talked about today in the Facebook or in my little talking about the energy for tomorrow. It's like saying there's this big responsibility that I have out there, right? And I need to take responsibility for that. And so it's like these boundary issue stuff of like learning when to say no,
Mm.
right? Because it's just like, oh, there's so much responsibility out there, and so I'm just gonna do it, right? I'm gonna take that on, you know. And so that's an aspect. But Mars and Saturn together creates this like foot on the brake and the gas at the same time. Kind of like rush hour traffic, a little bit of frustration there. And so the way that you have it is that at the same degree, 15 degrees, Scorpio. And so that creates like this kind of battle for position over Mars and Saturn. And so what that does is we look at the areas of life Saturn rules, which for you is your higher path and purpose and your career, and battling with Mars. So Mars is really strong here. It's in its own sign of relationship. So it's like partnerships and such it's like in conflict with that. And also just like your higher spiritual life and such. But taking it one at a time, we can just say right there, like career and relationships, there's this like kind of push-pull frustration conflict thing going on. And so we talked a little bit before, and yeah, you're saying you're in a past relationship that kind of had that flavor, or you never thought of it that way before, right?
Yeah, because I thought more of it as a partnership. I didn't ever think that. I mean, I guess we kind of went with just what he wanted to do career-wise, and I didn't really do. I wasn't really following what I wanted to do at all.
Right, right. And that's where this Mars, really, really strong. It's one of the strongest energies in your chart because it's in its own sign here. It forms what's called like the Ruchaka Yoga, or the Bright One,
Okay.
or like the Army General, right? So you have like this Army General for a partner, right? um, and it's like, whoa, it's really big and intense. And so when do you get to do your higher calling, right? Um, and so, the partners might bring this really incredible focus for you for all that, like, Aquarius and like all these ideas and such. But yeah, it's important for you at the same time to, focus in on what it is that you want to do, right? And so, yeah, do you have any like comments or questions about that so far?
Um, I I think I'm understanding. I I guess just that whole house had been confusing to me with those two energies. I wasn't quite sure
Hmm.
how they really dealt with each other. So
Right.
I think you explained that pretty well. So
Yeah. Well, the higher octave. So like I'm not gonna talk about a problem without a solution. That's just a lot of Indian astrologers just like, here's your karma, rar. You know.
deal with it.
Yeah. Uh, and so the way out is like patience ultimately, right? It's when you're in rush hour traffic and you know that you're going to be, you bring like a great audiobook, or you have something that can like prepare you for that, right? And so you get used to that kind of pressure. And so then instead of being more frustrated and like, there's just more patience with it.
Do you think my Saturn return um, what was that supposed to teach me?
Right. Well, the Saturn return was, how can you do your higher path, like your essence and your career, while being in partnership? And if that
Oh,
and if that wasn't happening, then I
that was not
suppose the Saturn return would have pointed that out to you.
it did. Not in that way, though. I didn't think about it like that at all
Mm.
before. I was just really mad at Saturn and thought he was being a jerk.
Right, right. Well, ultimately, uh, for a Taurus rising, Saturn is what's called the Yoga Karaka, which is where the most powerful planet, because it rules uh, your ninth house, which is like your higher belief systems, your higher path, uh, your essence of what you do, and career at the same time, right?
Okay.
And so Saturn is ultimately teaching you lessons that are helping you reach to that next level. Because what's happening is this Mars is uh, dominating your whole chart here. and Mars isn't necessarily connected to your higher path and Dharma, right? And so what it is, it's like relationships and that more domineering kind of army general figure is in this planetary war that they call it an Uda. They call it with Saturn. It's like, who's going to win? Is it Saturn or is it, Mars? And typically the brightest planet wins. So Mars, right? So the partner is going to, like, in their energy is going to be a little bit more domineering. And so for you, it's just really getting clear on having those healthy boundaries, right? And just discovering that. I feel like we all should go to therapy, to figure this stuff out. We need help, right?
Right.
And so it's like, how can you do that? Like, what is your story of like how you were like attached to your father figure and mother figure, right? And where can you learn to, like, oh, there's that karma, there's that blind spot. Instead of just unconsciously doing it, you can be aware of that karma, so to speak, happening, right?
Okay.
And so it's just really helpful to know that these are like inherent tendencies that you have, and that's what's really useful about Vedic astrology. And so like what area to work on. And so for sure,
Right.
the biggest area is that boundary in romantic and business alike, those kind of boundary things, right? And so
Okay.
in business, it can look like having really clear contracts, you know, because they're going to tend to want to assert their thing.
Now, I learned a big lesson on that a couple of years ago, actually during my return, a big thing that had to do with a roommate.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And so, yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you go ahead.
No,
You can't.
it was a lesson that was I didn't really want to learn at all. And but I learned it so good, I will never let anything like that happen again.
Good. Yeah. Um, and so I just want to get into this big Aquarian career thing you got going on here, just because
Okay.
it's like the elephant in the room, right? It's like, whoa. Um, and so, yeah, it's Aquarius can be very community based and networking and such. And also you have Jupiter really, really close to the sun. And so it infuses that Jupiter energy into your identity, which is the advisor, right? The teacher, the guide. And it's in the constellation Danista, which is all about the wealthy and the famous. So like working with like more elite people, more elite wealthy people. But the Jupiter, you couldn't see it when you were born. Like you were born with the sun above the earth and you couldn't see Jupiter, right? Because it was like behind the sun. And
Hmm.
so it's like we want to bring out those wealth qualities within you, because it's like the energy of Jupiter wasn't giving its results as much, right? And Jupiter is a planet of wealth and prosperity in that way.
Okay.
And so Jupiter, to strengthen Jupiter in a more less kind of Vedic way, is like reading scriptures, or not scriptures, but like spiritual teachings or being with teachers, and just like really having the higher education and teachers in your life to keep orienting you and to increase that Jupiter energy. And then of course there's like Jupiter mantra, which could bring it out, and a yellow sapphire, right? Um,
Okay.
right. But yeah, as far as career goes, do you have any questions around that? Or
Um, just kind of curious, what type of career do you think would be best for me? I mean,
yeah,
I really like what I'm doing, but I'm curious if that's
yeah. Let me see what's best, and then I'm going to ask you what your career is. So right now,
okay. Okay.
yeah, okay. So what I'm seeing is definitely something to do with partnerships. It's like really working well in teams. This Anuradha constellation is known for that. It's like this loyalty. The god that rules over its Mitra, uh, and the divine friend. And a lot of times in the Vedic rituals, Mitra is invoked before all the other gods to make sure that they all get along, right? So
Okay.
it has that energy to it. And then also just seeing all this Aquarius as well, it's like this big kind of organizational capacity, right? To work with larger networks of people, right? And helping like organize and structure and like come up with like really unique ideas about things. Like the Shatabisha constellation is very much kind of finding the loopholes in contracts, right? To be able to find like a unique way. And so both ways I'm seeing a lot dealing with working in teams, working with people, and coming up with more progressive solutions to things. And then also just just having Venus and the sun close together as well is like that human relations kind of vibe in
Hmm.
addition. And the
Hmm.
Jupiter as well is like, oh, I'm going to take care of you and just be this real compassionate, hospitable kind of person. And then the moon in the first house as well in Taurus is like, here's all the needs, here's all the resources, and I can hold that, right? For all those like aggressive, intense people out there. um, so yeah, is that like, yeah,
I'd say that's a very good description.
cool. So what do you
Yeah.
do? What,
Um, I am a right-of-way agent.
what's that? What's right
I
away?
right-of-way is basically, I guess the short way to say it would be if roads need to be widened or sidewalks need to be put in, somebody's got to go buy the real estate to put the road there. And
Interesting.
so that's what I do is negotiate with people. And
Uh-huh.
a lot of times it is a lot of problem solving because
Yeah.
um, you have to come up with different ways of doing things that, are going to be acceptable to both parties. And there's a lot of legal-ish stuff going on. I mean, contracts, we have a lot of contracts and the wording is very important.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Interesting.
so
Cool. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's almost like just figuring out all the ways of to organize community and
yeah, exactly.
just kind of being also just really uh like more like pleasing, you know, in that way of like, okay, we're gonna make it work for you. Like Jupiter and Venus are both the planets of the brightest planets, and they're both this like higher Brahmin teacher energy. um but yeah, it's funny because this constellation, or excuse me, Mars and Saturn is like this traffic, rush hour traffic energy,
Yeah,
right?
I was giggling about that
So it's
earlier when you
like,
were
oh, your career is about traffic. You like
saying,
right there.
and it totally is.
Yeah, if you watched my presentation yesterday, I literally have a picture of traffic, like
Oh my gosh,
of roads,
that's funny.
Yeah. But you're coming up with this more like Aquarius could be this universalizing utopian kind of energy. So, uh,
Kind of like for
it's
the greater good, doing things for the greater good.
exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the timing. Because what's even more incredible about Vedic astrology is these the dasha cycles, and
Okay.
this is even more impactful than the transits. It's like this comes first, and then we'll look at the transits. You know,
Okay.
and so you've been in this Jupiter cycle since about 23 years old,
Okay.
and so it really brings in that Jupiter rules the 12th sign, which is Pisces. And so this area right here is the 11th house of that same Aquarius community organizational energy, and working with like wealthy people, or the kind of upper echelon uh, governmental types, right?
Mhm.
And also rules the 8th house of like change and transformation as well, and other people's money is the 8th house too. So it's like
Oh yeah, we got a lot of that going
yeah,
on.
working with other people's money. And so now, when was the date of your divorce? or like when did it? If you want to, we don't have to get into that if you don't
It would
want
have
to.
been 2014. It wasn't finalized though until I think 2016, 2017, I think.
Okay, interesting. So I'm just looking at. So you were in. Well, it looked like more like 25 to 27 and a half was this kind of Saturn little bit of stress there. And then the Mercury came late 2013. And a lot of times Mercury or just any planet in Shatabisha has to learn how to like let go of attachments and relationships. But also the Mercury as well uh, just wants to be able to in the Shatabisha wants to be able to like to multiply in a way or to be more free to and also to like live your career. It's in the place of career as well. So yeah, but definitely the transits going on, the Saturn return as well. So yeah. Anyways,
That's really interesting.
yeah. And so right now you're just about to finish this subcycle of Venus, and so the Venus was more about your own personal needs and more of this kind of like career ambition as
Hmm.
well. And so it's about to shift in July 11th, around there, into the Sun subcycle. And so this is one of the biggest ones dealing with like land and like real estate and potentially making more money off of it with this constellation Danista, which is like the wealthy. And it really puts you more in this position of authority in your career as well. So
Okay.
I'm curious. So are you considering changing career or jobs, or are you?
Not planning on it. I
Okay,
really
cool.
like where I'm at.
Okay, cool. And so maybe you can ask for a raise or improve your position during this subcycle of the sun. It goes all the way from July all the way till the end of April 2020.
So
Um,
how long did that Venus one you were talking about, how
right.
long did that?
That was the end of 2016 till July this year.
Okay.
Yeah. And so uh, it Shatabisha as well is known as the veiling star, like a veil, right?
Hmm.
And so it could be causing some of that like confusion or disorientation within relationships.
Okay.
Yeah. Um,
That makes sense.
yeah. So, but it seems to be more of this like your own personal uh, needs and juxtaposed with career. So it seemed to be more of a, even though Venus is the planet of relationships, it still was in positions which are more self and career oriented.
Okay.
Yeah, and this Venus also rules the sixth house here of like work and service as well. Um, so yeah, sometimes, well, the sun sign, the sun cycle can be more career as well. Um, and so I never like to give future dates of relationships because they can happen anytime, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but it would seem this moon cycle, you would, yeah, be more in touch with like, okay, I want to reach that fulfillment. I want to search for what I want, like that security and you know that sensuality and such, and self-expression. So potentially that cycle would be better suited, but it doesn't matter either way.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. It seems like I got a lot of things kind of lumped together.
yeah, and
Um, It's
It's
kind of all in the middle. I have a lot of empty houses.
oh yeah, it's not really about being empty because it's like uh, the sun rules Leo, the fourth house. So where is the sun? It's in career. It's just like there's a lot more emphasis in career, right?
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that they're empty, right? Like you have a home and a mother, like um, and you have a community, you have friend, so
The
it's just
rulers are still there, but
yeah, exactly.
okay.
And so there's just more focus. Uh, like you're definitely oriented towards business and relationships and contracts. That seems to be the bigger theme there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely like, well, I mean, I don't have any children and that really hasn't been a plan, like a plan for me.
Hmm.
Um, so because I got so much, I guess, that I want to do in those other departments.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that's kind of why. Maybe that's why I've never really wanted to. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, that tends to happen a lot when people are very, like for instance, the fifth house is ruled by Mercury, and you have it in career, right?
Okay.
Fifth house is children. Yeah. Jupiter also, the planet of children in career, and also it's combust the sun, right? And so that's also another indication of like, oh, career, which is the sun, is dominating the karma for children, right? And so it's not to say like, oh, you cannot have children, um, which some would say, uh, but it's just like, okay, you kind of have to really figure it out and like focus uh, and go about it however in any kind of alternative way or anything you can think of, and also just having uh, the Kuja dosha, they call it, where they like go and make you marry a tree to get rid of the first divorce, you know.
Oh, okay.
So you could have saved that, but right. It's just like obviously you need to have the ideal of the partner and such, and this is just a harder thing, right? And it's still career. Saturn is the planet of career in the place of relationship, right?
Right.
So, um, yeah. So it's like, do you want to have children?
I don't.
There you
I
go.
don't. So I don't.
Awesome.
But I was wondering if that was why, maybe why, because everyone always asks me about, don't you want to have kids? Don't you want to
Yeah.
have kids? And I'm
Well,
like, not, I mean, no, not really.
if you're looking up in the sky, this is what it looked like, right? Where the indicator of children is Jupiter. It's you can't see it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then even
Um,
what'd you say?
I said that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Cool. And you're also just like, gosh, if I have a child, I have to deal with this guy, you know?
Something like that.
Yeah. Right. Cool. All right. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to?
I'm sure there's a million things I'll have to think about. I'll wake me up at 2 a.m. and I'll go, oh, I should ask this.
Right.
But as of right now, that was really cool. It was really neat to kind of see the comparison. Maybe one quick thing, um, with the Taurus ascendant, that changes my house system from what I'm used to knowing. Um, because that would be right now where that backs everything up one sign, right?
Yeah,
Because
it
I was
does.
okay.
So instead
Okay.
of Gemini moon and rising, it goes to Taurus moon and rising. And so
And
all
so
all
those
the
signs,
how.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
No, so I was saying just that'll change the signs of each of my houses, so they'll be kind of looking at each house a little bit differently than
Correct.
I had before. Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is, analyze your Western chart and use the Western chart, and that's great. you're going to get the same results. Analyze your, and then do it separately, you know, and it's just like you could do like tarot cards, you could do tea leaves, right? It's just
Uh-huh.
different ways of looking at the same thing. So if you're reading
Okay.
a Western horoscope prediction, you're going to read your Western sign, right? And if I'm reading a Vedic, I'm going to read my Vedic sign. And so, but what we have with the Vedic is we have 27 additional constellations that give way more detail about what's going on. It's
Is
not,
that why the birth time needs to be so much more precise in with Vedic than with Western?
yeah, but also just because we put emphasis more on the first house being
Oh,
the head of the
right.
chart, which changes every 2 hours. Because
Okay.
then your chart would be a totally different thing, right? With it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And there's still a lot of all
Oh, I
these.
didn't know you could turn it like that. That's
Oh
really
yeah,
neat.
yeah. Doo-doo-doo.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yep. So yeah, that's how it works.
Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate you doing that for me.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Okay, great. Well, great to have you on.
All right.
And
Thank you so much.
yeah, have a
Appreciate it.
beautiful night.
All right. You too. Thank
Okay,
you.
blessings. And
Bye.
so cool. There's this Harsh Modi. Hey, how's it going? So I need to have we need to schedule you in to have your chart read. You're sending me all your birth info. So I'm gonna have one person a day, and so I have openings next week, so we can get at you next week. Sound good? Cool. All right. Well, thanks for attending, everybody that has. Many blessings to you, and we'll see you tomorrow.